Good morning. Welcome to Cooking G-Free Deliciously. My name is Kimberly, and I'm so glad that you've joined me today in my kitchen. Today, we've got a real treat, and I'm going to be walking you through the steps to get or achieve a perfectly seared pork chop. So I learned a lot today about this by talking to my friends at the National Pork Board, and their website is pork.org. Also was able to discover a lot more things that I didn't know about pork through the WPPA, which is Wisconsin Pork Producers Association, and it's WPPA.org. So we're going to get started today. I'm featuring one of the spices in the Home Cooked Holiday collection of Wildtree for their December cooking collection. That is the Herbes de Provence blend. It is a wonderful blend, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that as we get going here. The December cooking collection also has a cranberry poppy seed dressing, and it has a s'mores dessert blend, which I'll be using next week for my cooking show where I do cookies. And then we've got a hearty spaghetti sauce blend that is really a staple. It's wonderful in the kitchen, and about 1 tablespoon of this with a large can of crushed tomatoes will give you a very tasty spaghetti sauce. So that's our December cooking collection. You can go to my website at gfreedeliciously.com and my Wildtree store to find out more about that. Also today, I'm using roasted garlic grapeseed oil. I absolutely love this. I've talked about our natural grapeseed oil many times. The garlic has a nice garlicky flavor, and I'm using that in the pork chop, in cooking the pork chops today to get a nice sear. And that's very, very flavorful. So I highly recommend that. One of my favorite Wildtree products. Just move a few things out of the way so that we can get started. Now I'm to get going here in the Wildtree recipe, and that they have the parsnip puree. I pre-cooked my parsnips last night instead of boiling them to make the puree. You're going to cook those down in cream milk with a little bit of water. Stir in 4 cloves of garlic and some unsalted butter, and let those cook until they get soft, and then you're just going to puree those up. You can puree them by putting them in a blender. If you're doing it that way, be careful if the mixture is hot so that you don't blow the top off your blender. I like to use a stick blender for blending up the puree. And my happy helper just here let me know that my wine is showing. So I'll go ahead and close my garage door here. Thank you for that. I know, I enjoy wine. Anyway, and on the line of wine, December 23rd, I'm going to be revealing my picks of a holiday wine to go with a wonderful winter salad that I'll be making, but that's down the road. So you'll want to be sure to check that. Anyway, back on track here today. You're going to start with the parsnip puree, and I think I left off with blending it up. Again, I use a stick blender. It's nice because you can do that right in the pan, and it's going to make a wonderful garlicky, creamy puree that is going to go perfectly with our pork chops and apples in this dish. So I'll be showing you that in just a little bit. I've got it warming on the stove over here. And as we get started with these pork chops, I'm using porterhouse chops, and you're going to want to go to check out the post. I'll have it up by tomorrow on the website at the latest, but I'm going to be talking more about the 5 different cuts of pork chops that you can choose when you're at the butcher's or at your favorite store. And I'll be talking a little bit about the qualities of those pork chops as you choose them for searing, for achieving a perfect sear on a pork chop as you cook them. I recommend that you take the pork chops out of the refrigerator about 20 minutes before you're going to get started so that they can come up to room temperature. So you're going to let those pork chops come up to room temperature so that they cook evenly and reach 145 degrees as they're searing and cooking. So as we go through here, I'm going to be just hitting on a few more of those points to get a perfectly seared pork chop. And I want to be able to make sure that I'm seeing my notes here for you. So I'm going to start today. You're going to start by heating the pan on a pretty high heat. You're going to want to be medium high to high to bring the pan up to temperature. And the type of pan that you use is going to make a difference in searing these pork chops. In the Wildtree digital recipe card, they'll talk about using a nonstick pan. I personally prefer to use a traditional cast iron pan for searing pork chops. It holds the heat really well, and it's going to assist you in getting a perfect sear on those pork chops. So I've got just 2 tablespoons of the Wildtree roasted grape seed oil. Set that back behind me. And as the pan heats up, you'll notice I'm just turning that a little bit to coat the bottom of the pan as it heats. And you're going to want to pay close attention to your pan, because as that oil, and it's a high heat oil, grapeseed oil has a much higher heat ability than like an olive oil, and it gives a pure flavor in the end. So the heat point on that oil, as it comes up, it's going to start shimmering in the bottom of your pan. And as you watch, it's going to reach that point just before it begins to smoke. And it looks like I'm there. So now we want to drop that heat down, and I'm just going to pick it off the burner for half a second since I'm using an electric cooktop, so that heat can come down a little bit on that burner before I put that back in. So while that's coming down, again, I'm using the herbs de Provence blend, and I'm just putting some of that on these pork chops, along with a little salt on each side. I've got my salt crack here, and I'm using the kosher salt just to grab a little bit. I'm going to turn those nice meaty chops over and continue with a little more of the herbs de Provence blend on the second side, along with a little more salt. There we go. So my pan, my oil is still shimmering. It's still got that little bit of a ripple effect on the top. Nice and hot. You can feel if you place your hand over and that you'll feel the heat radiating up out of the oil. And you're just going to take those chops, and now you'll hear that famous sizzle as they drop into the pan. Just set this out of my way behind me. Now these are going to take about 5 minutes per side, and you really want to resist moving them around in the pan or trying to peek underneath while those are cooking. So I think it's important to have a small timer and then right next to your cooking area as you cook these. You're going to be searing them until they're a golden brown and they're crisp on the outside. So that's going to take again about 4 to 5 minutes on each side. 5 minutes, my chops are a good inch to inch and a quarter, maybe inch and a half thick. So those chops are going to take closer to the 5-minute amount of time to sear. And while they sell a lot of batter strains and that, I don't prefer to use a batter strain when I'm searing pork chops because you want that steam to be coming up. And if your heat is cooked right, your chops are going to cover most of the bottom of the pan, so you're not going to have too big of a mess anyway. You're going to have a little bit more control over your heat on a gas range, but again, so that you can see everything going on today, I wanted to use my electric cooktop to do this. And we're at about 3 minutes here. So while those are cooking, I just want to talk a little bit more about the seasonings that we've used today. It is the Wildtree Herbs de Provence blend. You also could make your own. And again, on the website, I will include my basic recipe for making your own blend of the spice. What's interesting about Herbs de Provence blend is really a staple of French and Mediterranean cooking, and it was way back in the day just a regular sort of general spice blend used in primarily French cooking. It became a defined blend following its popularity in the 1960s when Julia Child's recipe for Puree Pate Herbs de Provence appeared in the mastering art of French cooking. And it really became popular after she brought attention to the blend in that cookbook, and chefs from all over really started using that in their cooking on a regular basis. So herbs to province blend, each blend really varies from commercial producers to home cooks, um, because it's kind of, you use your own preference and your own taste in putting the blend together. And it can really make a difference depending on what foods you're using the blend in. But the Wildtree Herbs de Provence blend is a wonderful, wonderful all-purpose blend for many, many foods, from beverages to meats to desserts, for using. And I'm getting real close here to turning these pork chops. We've got about another 20 seconds or so to go. And as you um, go to move them, if they're sticking to the bottom of the pan, you're just going to want to give that another minute or so, before you flip it. Because when they are actually ready to release, they will just pick up super, super easily. I'm going to grab, and you'll see, I'm sure you can't see it right now, but you will see as these sear and cook that the blood starts coming up through the pork chop. And the oil does get a little messy in doing this. But now those are starting to get, and I'm hoping that you're able to see, they're starting to get a nice crispy bit on the outside. And I'll start my timer again. So I left off with the herbs de Provence blend, where many cooks will create their own signature blend that they develop based on their personal preference, and it depends a lot, again, on the dish that you're going to be using it for. But I love the Wildtree because it is an all-purpose blend, and that you makes it easy. You don't have to think a whole lot about it. And if you're the type of cook who just wants things ready to go, this really is a product for you. Many spice houses also will carry that blend for you to make it super easy. And you'll find things like kind of the base of it is going to be thyme and rosemary and basil in there, and then you're going to add in other spices to make that blend. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about the apples and the parsnips a little more. Why is it there's always issues when you don't want it to? I will, first I'm going to talk a little bit about the apples. I like to have everything ready to go as I'm cooking. So I'll pre-prep and that the apples and everything ahead of time. I have this handy, cool little gadget here. You're able to pull up the edges and adjust just by turning this gadget a little bit, and you can see you can make big slices, or again turn it the opposite direction for smaller slices. So that makes it super simple. Course the apple and everything all at once to save a little bit of time. And then the shallots. The shallots we will combine with the apples after removing the pork chops. We're going to put the apples and the shallots in here. And I use this size shallot. It's, I would say, about the size of a golf ball. And just 2 of these shallots are going to give you about half a cup, which is plenty of shallots for this particular recipe. Again, then the parsnip puree, just to elevate the taste a little bit more. When I go to plate this up, I'm going to use a little ground nutmeg on top, just to give it a little bit more warm, nutty flavor when you bring it to the table. So we've got about 1:30 left to go here. And so I also wanted to just cover a little bit about the nutritional punch that this particular recipe will give you in that. The pork chops are very, very healthy for you. Pork chops have vitamin K, and it's a lean meat that's considered a white meat. It has a lot of health benefits that you will love, and the ability to put that into your meal plan and diet. Again, I will be talking more about the nutritional value of the pork in the post on the blog. Apples, of course, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Who doesn't know that? And apples are very, very good for you. They pair very, very well with the pork. And then parsnips, checking here. And those are still sticking just a little bit. So now I'm going to interrupt myself on the nutritional value of the parsnip because I want to check these pork chops. You're looking for an internal temperature of 145 degrees for a perfectly cooked pork chop. So I'm just going to slide this in to see where we're at here. And that one is looking good. And so is that one. I'll give them one final flip before I take them out of the pan, and I'm going to grab my plate that I have over here. And as you can see, I'll hold these up for you. There we go. You can see the nice brown crusty sear on these pork chops. Now these are a bone-in pork chop, and now that they've been seared, we want to give them a 3-minute rest. So I'm just going to stick those over here underneath my heat lamp. By giving it a 3-minute rest, those are going to, the juices are going to come back into the meat. And now it's time to add the apples right into the pan, along with the shallots. Shallots, get out of there. And I'm going to turn this back on My electric stove, I'm at about a 4 for heat, so that's in the medium range of heat, which a medium range of heat is going to be 300 to 375 degrees. I know some of the fancier, newer digital stoves actually have digital settings, especially for electric stoves on the burners. So you're able to set that actual temperature. And we're just going to let those hang out there for a few minutes and start cooking. I'm going to turn this back on again. It's going to take about 5 minutes total as those cook. And as soon as my timer goes off, then I will add in a cup of chicken stock and Dijon mustard into there. So I'll just get a few things out of the way and get my chicken stock over here. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but you know, when you're cooking, you have to pay attention to what's going on here, as well as carrying on your conversation. So I'm using just a cup of chicken stock. You're going to want a low sodium chicken stock that is also gluten-free. Swanson has a wonderful stock for this purpose, and it does list right on the box that it is non-GMO, gluten-free, no preservatives, and no artificial ingredients. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that I am a big proponent of eating clean and healthy. So we want these apples just to start browning a little bit as they cook. So today's show is going to go just a little bit long here. The time just flies by, doesn't it? And those are, we've got about 2 minutes more to go. We want to give these apples enough time that the sugars start coming out of them and the flavor kind of melts with those shallots as they cook. And a shallot is going to be a little less strong. It's got more of a mild, almost buttery taste than an onion, I think, at least when it cooks up in the pan. And it's a very nice ingredient to include when you're making sauces and gravies, that sort of thing. So I know I will run out of time when I go to plate, so I'm going to jump back for just a moment while these time out at 5 minutes to tell you a little bit more about the nutritional value of the parsnips. Parsnips, if you've never tried them before, they are a root vegetable. They're very, very delicious. They're fat-free. In the carrot family, they're saturated fat-free, also cholesterol-free, and they're very, very low in sodium. They do have natural sugars in them, so they're a little bit sweet, and they have many, many macronutrients. So they're a super powerhouse of essential vitamins and nutrients. They supply antioxidants that help prevent chronic diseases such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease, and they're low in calories with a high water content. So they're super, super good to include in your diet if you're looking at weight loss, because they help to fill you up without a lot of calories there. And, probably one of the best things is that they're very affordable and they're super delicious too. And I love parsnips. I have grown them before in my garden, and I use them in a lot of stews, along with turnips and rutabaga. Those root vegetables are just really, really yummy, delicious, and wonderful. And there is my timer again. So I'm hoping that you can see these have started to brown and caramelize. I have left the skin on. I think it helps to make this dish really, really pretty. And now we're going to add the chicken stock, and I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, just to ramp up the flavor a little bit more. We're going to want about a tablespoon in there. And you're just going to stir this together so that the mustard kind of blends in. And this creates, or rather, as the pork chops seared, it created what's called a fond. And the fond now, which is, a fond is simply those little brown bits in the bottom of the in the bottom of the pan when you're cooking, those little brown bits. And when we add in the apple shallots and then the liquid chicken stock and everything into there, those little brown bits are going to come off the bottom of the pan. And now is the time that we're going to let this hang out for a little bit and reduce until it is about half the liquid and that. So last night, I wanted to get a jump start on today, and I got going on making some of this, and we actually had these pork chops for our dinner last night. They're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I've got some apples from last night, because this takes a little bit to cook down, and I wanted to show this to you without the show getting too long. And I'll just grab here. Spoon for the apples over here, which I have been warming on the other stove. So to put this all together now, and here, before I get started on that, I do want to show you this wonderful parsnip puree, and that looks an awful lot like mashed potatoes. It is just super yummy, delicious. And I'm going to grab my pork chops to keep them handy as I put this all together. You're going to take just a dollop or two of the parsnip puree, and this is so good, so I definitely want to make a healthy dollop here. And now I'll grab my pork chop, and I'm going to arrange that up on top. And then on top of that. I've got some of this beautiful apple and shallot. A little sprinkle of nutmeg over the top. And just to make it extra festive and pretty, here we go. Some flat leaf parsley that I chopped up. And this, my friends, is a wonderful, yummy, yummy dinner with perfectly pan-seared pork chops. The cameraman is going to show you a little closer here. And as the rest of my apples simmer down and become wonderful, I can't wait to dig in for lunch with this recipe. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. I hope you've gotten a few tips for perfectly pan-searing pork chops. Check it all out on the blog at gfreedeliciously.com. Have a happy holiday season, and I hope to see you next week when I'll be doing Christmas cookies. Until then, I love you very much. Bye-bye.